Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If this is the first time joining me, be sure to click that subscribe button and like this video if you find this interview helpful. Today, I'm interviewing two of my new friends in the health space. I'm interviewing the low-ox grandma, Jeannie, and the low-ox coach, Monique Attinger. If you are new to these wonderful ladies, they have both set on a mission to spread the news to the world about the toxicity of oxalates. Monique is a nutritionist in Canada who works exclusively with clients to help them with their health struggles related to oxalates. She's been a wealth of knowledge for me personally as I've tried to navigate this crazy world of oxalate poisoning. She and I often partner to offer group coaching, so be on the lookout for the next one sometime soon. Jeannie is a social media influencer, and she uses her talents and her microphone to spread her message across social media and across the world. Both of these wonderful ladies have their own health struggles with oxalates, which they're going to share with you today. And of course, you know me, Dr. Mandy. I too have my struggles with bladder pain syndrome and chronic UTIs. You don't want to miss this fun interview with the oxalate trio. Hey everybody, I am here with two very, very special people. I'm here with Monique Attinger and Jeannie DeAngelis, who is also known as the low-ox grandma, and we have the low-ox coach, and we've got icy healer over here, Dr. Mandy. We are here today to talk about oxalates, of course. And we each have a story to share that we want you to hear, and also give you some tips and, just kind of flow with the conversation. Some of us, this is the first time the three of us are actually together in a meeting. So it's been nice to see all of us together here, and you get to be a part of this. So before we begin, those of you who are new, I want to tell you what oxalates are. Oxalates are basically, they're anti-nutrients that are found in plant-based foods, bottom line. They are damaging to your cells. They can damage your mitochondria. We are starting to finally appreciate the role they're playing in destroying our health. They are, animals eat them, we eat them, we have the ability to break them down to some capacity, but I truly believe that we're destroying our gut health, and through the process, we're losing that ability, but also we're eating too much of it in our diet because we're going dairy-free and gluten-free, and there's too much food available. Think about it. Like when our ancestors were foraging, I don't think they were juicing spinach, right? No, they were not. So we're just doing things that is not meant for the human body. But then we also have other factors at play. Oxidative stress plays a role in the generation of your own metabolism, creating these little crystals. Mold can play a role, fungus can play a role, nutrient deficiencies can play a role. So things like alcohol can deplete certain nutrients. Magnesium is very depleted amongst everybody. I think every single person I work with has some kind of mineral deficiency. And then we've got, vitamin B1 and other nutrients that can easily become depleted in our modern lifestyle. So I think a lot to blame here is the modern lifestyle. So we each have our own story. I have interstitial cystitis, which I didn't realize was due to oxalates until probably about 5 to 6 years ago when I first encountered this disastrous disease. It's horrible. Icy bladder pain. You guys listening probably know what I'm talking about. Pain upon urination, urgency, frequency. Doctor said to me, this is something you have to live with for the rest of your life. And then here's some medication and have a nice day. And I did stumble upon the oxalate group about 10 years ago, and I was questioning it because I was like, I'm not sure if this can really be causing my problem. I tried the low oxalate diet for like a hot month, and it wasn't enough time, obviously. Didn't feel better, and then I just kind of let that one go. And then I re-encountered it again when my symptoms got worse and I started having really bad UTIs and bleeding from my urethra. And what really made me realize something is going on is when I did a water only fast for 5 days and my symptoms improved. And I realized there is something my body is excreting that I am not excreting when I'm fasting. And some people get worse when fasting. So don't think you're going to go fast and this is going to solve the problem. Some people get worse, but I got better. And so that's when I decided I'm going to go on this health journey. And I went back to school, got my degrees and my license and all certifications, and really started to dive into the biochemistry behind all this. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So then I met Monique through the Triangle Oxalate group. And she was very important played an important role in my life to help me understand even further what oxalates do and how can I eat? How can I change my diet in order to be personalized for my condition? And so she's amazing and a wonderful resource. So she's going to be here to talk to you. And then I met Jeannie, the Lox grandma, on Instagram, and you got to follow her because she's got some. If you follow her, you probably will never touch another oxalate again because she puts a lot of things.
Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So Monique's in Canada, Jeannie's in Brooklyn, right? And I'm here.
I'm on Long Island, but I'm saying it's the Brooklyn spirit. It's just like tell it like it is, and if you don't like it, oh well.
Yeah, exactly. She's in Long Island. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, let's just introduce yourselves. First, tell about your story and how you discovered oxalate as something that was important for you to remove.
Well, how about I jump in, Jeannie, because from a chronological standpoint, like I met you while I was doing that work on the low oxalate, the Triangle Oxalate support group. So I'm the oldster here in the sense that I've been doing this the longest. It's almost 15 years now since I first encountered a low oxalate diet. Not quite. I think it's maybe 13 years, but over a decade I've been doing this diet. I encountered it because my young daughter, who was about 3 at the time, 2.5, we were going through potty training. She had a lot of pain and irritation, both with urinating, but also her labia looked really red, and she had this rashy look to her that was almost like, I thought maybe she had yeast going on, right? It was my second child, so not my first rodeo. I sort of thought, this doesn't look quite right. I was using things like zinc creams and so on, and she even had rashing sort of down the back of her legs. And I was just shocked at how much pain she was in. She would weep when I would, change her pull-up after being overnight in it. And I thought, this isn't right. And so I was seeing a functional med naturopath up here in the Toronto area. And I went to him. He had been treating me and also my young son for about 6 or 7 years at that point. So he'd been around when Raina was born and so on and so forth. I start to describe these symptoms, that she's having problems with frequent urination, that she's got this inflammation, in the labia. She's got irritation around the backs of her legs and the rash comes and goes. And sometimes she's complaining about her stomach. And he takes down all this information and he says, I think she's got an oxalate problem. And what I really distinctly remember is saying, what's an oxalate? And I had always been interested in nutrition. So the whole idea that there was something in my food that I knew nothing about, like it wasn't a lectin, it wasn't I knew some of this stuff. And although I was working in the IT field at that point, I had always been kind of a nutrition geek. Long story short, I decided that I would go on the diet with her because my 2.5-year-old was a little bit like her mother, might have been a little stubborn, might have had attitude if she had to do it by herself. And I thought, well, I'll just do this with her because that way I model what she needs to do. And I was worried enough about her health that I wanted her to try this diet and give it a reasonable go. And I get on this diet, and this practitioner's been treating me. Like, it's not like he's not familiar with my health history. And all the problems I had up to that point all started to improve in concurrently, like with each other. And at that point in time, I was unwell, although I had no formal diagnosis yet. I had to take handfuls of digestive enzymes to get my food down. I had diffuse muscle pain. I had poor immune resilience. Like I'd get a bug and be sick for 6 weeks.
Oh,
I had brain fog. I had insomnia where I would drop into bed at 9 o'clock exhausted, but I would wake up at like 1 or 1:30 wide awake. I would be awake through the middle of the night. I might get another hour or two fitfully. And then I had young kids. I had to be up for the rest of the day. And, you know, I had a functional med MD as well. I was saying, you're doing everything right. I don't know why you're not getting better. And he was treating my thyroid, which was off, and my adrenals, which were off. And so there were times when I would walk up a set of stairs and I would be huffing and puffing at the top of them. And I was like, something is wrong here, but nobody had an answer for me. And of course, all these things don't look like they're connected to each other necessarily. And so, you know, it just seems like I had incredibly bad luck. But, you know, Occam's razor turns out to apply here too, in the sense that look for something simple. How likely is it that somebody has 7 or 8 or 9 different diagnoses and there's no connection between any of them? Like that's highly unlikely, right?
very.
But
Yeah.
the thing is that everybody had been treating them all separately. And then all of a sudden, like I said, everything starts to resolve at once. And I went, what's that? And you know, again, long story short, I'm now a nutritionist. I went back to school and retrained because I wanted to help other people. It was very clear to me that somehow this sucker was running under the radar. Our tests don't really look for it.
Mhm.
We don't really treat it as important unless you've got kidney stones or kidney damage. Suddenly, when people have kidney damage, then we start looking for oxalate in the rest of the body. But the question is, has it been there for a lot longer than when we went looking for it? And at this point, after a decade now of working with clients, I'm convinced that this is a much bigger problem for all the reasons that you listed, Mandy. You know, perfect storm of what we're doing with the gut, perfect storm of all of a sudden we can eat spinach
And put it in a blender and juice it.
365 days a year. When I was a kid, because I'm in my 60s, it was a once a year thing. It was seasonal, right? So we've lost seasonality, as Sally Norton would also attest to, but that was something that I realized early in being on the triangle oxalates group. We've lost some of our gut integrity because of, you know, there's good reasons to take antibiotics and so on, but we've kind of become too used to using them too frequently. Perhaps.
Oh, but even people that I talk to, they haven't been breastfed. I wasn't breastfed.
I wasn't breastfed either. So there's all these things that would have gone into a healthy microbiome,
Right.
a healthy body. Oh, and I was raised in the days where a fat child was your best kind of. That was a healthy kid.
Were you overweight as a child? I was.
Oh yeah. So I suspect looking backwards that I have probably been dealing with oxalate for a very long time. For people in my age range, tonsils and adenoids seem to have come out almost all the time.
That was me.
And now I know that you can get tonsil stones and they can be oxalate based.
Oh.
And so it may be that we were affecting the immune system in here, and that's why the ears keep getting infected because the tonsils aren't doing their job, right? And then I was one of the youngest people in my local hospital to get their gallbladder out. Guess what gallstones can be made of?
Oh, gotcha.
I was 20 when it came out.
Yes.
So my suspicion is that this has been running under the radar for a very, very long time for me and maybe for others. Like I remember going to the doctor when I was 12 and my doctor declaring that I had a lazy stomach because my digestion was bad already at that point. So, you know, what I was dealing with later in my 40s when I had young kids had just been built on and built on and built on. And if you're a well-intentioned person who's not feeling well and you follow the conventional nutritional advice, you are going to amp up your oxalate through the roof. I was taking high dose vitamin C. We now know that's a heightened risk for kidney stones. Why? Vitamin C degrades into oxalate. And I was eating all the big hitters. beets, beet greens, chard, almonds, like other kinds of nuts, grain alternatives like quinoa and teff, if I was taking in less than 1,500 or 2,000 milligrams of oxalate a day, I'd be really surprised. And so, of course, pro-inflammatory, potentially creating microcrystals in your body. On top of that, biologically, biochemically inflammatory. So if it gets into that mitochondria, it gets into that cell, it can raise some havoc that way. So you can really be affecting the body systemically, which is why I had bad knees, bad joints, bad muscles, bad this, bad that. And at 48, when I started this diet, I honestly thought that I had a lemon for a body and that I would be lucky if I saw my kids grow up.
Oh,
Very sad. Very sad.
Yeah, I know. I was there too.
And now I'm in my 60s and I have better energy, better stamina, better everything that I've had probably since my 30s.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I was really sick too. Really, really sick in my 20s and 30s. But I didn't know. I had hormone problems, bloating constantly, struggling with my weight. I almost looked like every month I looked like I was 3 months pregnant. I wasn't pregnant. I had fat jeans and skinny jeans, right? Because I was so bloated. So Jeannie,
or irregular periods and stuff too. There's
a
hormone entanglement there.
Oh, yeah.
I want to turn over to Jeannie, but I just wanted to be the one who doesn't fit the mold.
Oh yeah, and it's very important for people who are listening to hear this, because I get a lot of challenge. People challenge me too, especially when their organic acid test or their NutriVal doesn't show up the oxalates, and they're like, "Oh, it's not an oxalate problem." And I'm like, "No, that's not the case." Exactly.
Snapshot, right?
And we'll talk about that in a minute too, because I want people to understand that you really can't test for it. So, all right, Jeannie, tell us your crazy story.
Well, to add to what Monique said, as far as adding another layer to that, is that, people on the spectrum also have a higher, according to Susan Owens, they have a higher level in their blood, 3 times more actually than neurotypicals. So I just found out that I'm on the spectrum. Okay. I have the MTHFR, a couple of genetic SNPs, 677, 1298. So that kind of like going backwards to being even a small child. I was sick from when I had horrible periods, ended up with endometriosis. I ended up with a dermoid tumor in my abdominal wall when I was very young. I had to have surgery. I had a hysterectomy at 27 years old.
Oh, wow.
I was just constantly sick. And then
Jeannie, can you go back in time? Like how far back can you remember you not feeling well? Or was just that kind of your status quo?
I never felt well.
Okay.
I had intractable anxiety as a small child. Now I know why. I mean, as far as the spectrum disorder, separation anxiety. I ended up finding out recently that I'm a panda. So I have like all of this, this strep and all of this, which comes, I guess, just comes with spectrum, and then you add the oxalate problem on top. But when I hit my 40s, I started to get really bad diverticular attacks. I ended up, with having these recurrent diverticular attacks, C. diff, from all the antibiotics, constant antibiotics. So here I was already hormonally off because I had my hysterectomy very young. I had already had major surgeries. I was always on antibiotics, and I had C. diff that would not go away. I had to have a fecal transplant to get rid of it, and that didn't get rid of it really. So, but now I know why. Oxalate causes you not to really be able to, the bacteria to really not be dealt with properly. Correct? I'm asking.
Yeah, your immune system can really be struggling with that constant inflammation that oxalate's generating. So it's kind of distracted. And, I had problems with persistent infections, which I don't have anymore. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then the other thing it does is it can cause dysbiosis because the bacteria, they degrade oxalates. And so there's a lot of oxalates present. Then you're going to have overgrowth of oxalate degrading bacteria. And the two that are really well known are E. coli and Enterococcus faecalis. And I see a lot of people with UTIs of those.
So then I had UTIs that wouldn't go away. They had to do a colon resection because of the constant diverticular disease, which that right there adds another layer to an oxalate problem. And then it began where I had 7 surgeries in 6 years. I was just, everything was just falling apart. And I could not get better. The anxiety level was so bad that it was like I was bordering on hospitalization. That's how crazy I was, because I would go to the hospital with a blockage, have to have emergency surgery, more antibiotics. Now that I say, but just to give you just like a little insight, my mother, who also was a panda, I believe now also was on the spectrum, she had vulvodynia about oh my gosh, breast cancer twice, vulvodynia. And I can remember like 20 years ago, she would call me up, she'd go, I'm burning. And I'd say, Mom, don't eat so many beets or whatever. And then I just let it go, She ended up with pulmonary fibrosis. That's actually what killed her. The doctor said to her, we don't know what's happening with your lungs, but they're being poisoned and they're turning to glass.
What? So, the doctor said that?
Oh, yes. Yes. My mother would say, they don't know why. It's like my lungs are toxic and I don't. Anyway.
I'm sorry. Did they do a biopsy? How did they identify the glass?
No, they said that they look like they're turning to glass. So I guess it's that glass lung thing that they have. But then I came to find out, I read some research, Monica, Monique, Monica, what is it?
That's okay.
Monique, I read some research that pulmonary fibrosis is something that can happen from oxalate. Because
it can be related to oxalate, absolutely. And you could be moving oxalate out through the phlegm that the lungs are producing.
Right.
Yeah.
So after my last surgery,
Jeannie, when did she pass away?
My mother, oh my gosh, like almost 10 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
So after my last surgery, I had really bad burning gastritis. They looked down there, they found a cyst in my small bowel, but they didn't know what it was. When I had vaginal surgery, because my insides, everything, all of my connective tissue was falling apart, they found another cyst in there. I had 2 failed rectocele surgeries, cystocele surgery, right? And so after that, my whole thing was that I thought, well, I'm falling apart because I'm so constipated. So although I was already like plant-based, because I wasn't a meat eater, I was Italian, I was always eating, I'm very proud of it. And I thought dairy was my problem. I cut all that out. Well, I would say 4 months after the last surgery, it hit the fan bad. Right. I ended up with vulvodynia. So the same burning I had in my stomach was down there. And then I felt like I had the flu. Like everything was always spinning and nauseous. And I would wake up one day, be okay. But then the next day it would be like I had the flu. And then I ended up in the emergency room vomiting from dizziness. And then I kind of like put 2 and 2 together and I realized, wait a minute, this is what my mother had, this vulvodynia. So I started to research the vulvodynia, and that's when I got back to the oxalate thing. And that will be, I'm going to start my 3rd year in August, but it's just like kind of, and like you guys helped me so much, but I ended up having to leave Facebook. So I never went back. But, Susan, Tabe, is that how you say
Taube? Taube. How do you say it? Is it Taube?
And I say Taube, but I'm not absolutely sure. I'm actually going to be talking to her online soon, so I'll have the proper pronunciation.
And Annie, everybody was so patient. We've spoken to Susan a few times, to try to help me through this. But I really believe that I had a perfect storm of spectrum that I didn't realize. And what I ended up finding out, because when I got so oxalate toxic, the spectrum symptoms came to such a head that kind of, my husband was like, because I have a lot of autism in my family, my husband's like, you act just like, so-and-so, you need to go get tested. Well, it ends up, I have ASD and generalized anxiety disorder. But I just have to say that the anxiety, the intractable anxiety that I suffered with from the time I was a baby, and I'm telling you small, OCD and all of that kind of stuff is really I'm never going to be calm. That's just not my makeup. but that horrible feeling where every cell in my body was on fire. That's what it would feel like. It would feel like everything was just sizzling all the time. I could not relax at all. That's really gone. That's one of the big things. And it's like, so I'm just going to go from head down. They found white dust on my brain, thought I had MS. I have been on thyroid medication since I'm 32 years old. Gastritis, acid reflux, all of these horrible and intestinal problems, including having to have part of my colon cut out, constipation, the whole bladder area, all of the everything falling apart inside, arthritis. I have fingers that are all deformed and everything. Okay, constantly swollen where my fingers were just like sausages. I couldn't get my rings on and off. I could just keep going. I don't want to. It's boring to hear all of this, but it's just tinnitus, eyes. At one point, when I was right before I realized what was going on, my hair, I mean, it's much better, but it actually looked like I was on chemo. It started to burn. And I was like, what's wrong with my hair? It was like straight, I had straight, shiny hair. And all of a sudden my hair just started to curl like people who've been on chemo. Well, actually the toxins were everywhere. So
sounds a lot like you also have mast cell activation based on the things you're saying, and the oxalates promote the mast cells, promote the histamine, that whole pathway. So wow. Can I ask a question about the ASD? When you said that your neurological symptoms went crazy, what I'm just curious because I have some family members that have that. What do I look out for?
Well, for me, I now my whole life makes sense. I look back at a lot of the things that I was struggling with and have been struggling with that I thought was me, like something's wrong with me, like character wise or whatever. Like, although like I know that I'm a very bright person, there's a lot of like what they call executive function type things where I get extremely confused if things aren't presented to me in a certain way. It causes a lot of anxiety. I have tremendously horrible sensory issues. I have earphones over here. I have a respirator that sometimes I just have to put on because somebody down the block is putting, some lacquer on their porch. I can smell it. I wrap myself in a blanket to go to bed. It's like if there's a sheet near my face, I have a lot of physical. So I would say two of the anxiety, the executive function of not being able to get things a certain way, having to be like only visual all the time, and the tremendous sensory issues. I have an outfit. This is it. It comes in every color.
Yeah, interesting.
I wear it every day because if I have socks on or anything, but so it was just like Aunt Jeannie is weird. Now, even with the oxalate thing, it's just, I have like 4 special interests. Luckily, the oxalate thing has become a special interest. That was all I talk about. That's all I care about. And that's also a symptom of ASD where especially women. Now, the difference with women, I don't know if the people that you're talking about, women present very different. They're more social. They hyperverbalize like I do. So a lot of times they fly under the
radar.
Yeah. And so they're different than boys. They'll socialize, they mask a lot, they kind of like look at what the situation calls for as far as how they're supposed to behave, and then they do it.
Very adaptable.
So
yeah.
I'm a classic, example of that. So a lot of people are like,
I'm very high functioning, high functioning. May I ask you, because I only reason I ask this because it was one in my family. Is there some social when it comes to are you cautious of who you get close to? Like you're not one that has a lot of friends.
Well, I have
keep to yourself, introverted.
I'm friendly if I meet you.
Yeah.
But I don't have a lot of friends, and one of the things is that because people all along now, I don't care because I'm like, if you don't like me, this is God, how God made me. But some people don't really like my personality as far as like always having information that I want to share. Autism, always wanting to be the one that wants to fix everything. Autism. So they're like, enough, Jean, but I always thought it was because I was weird or people just didn't like me, but it really is because this is me, so now the diagnosis has really helped me because I'm accepting myself for who I am, and everything in my life and all the struggles that I had that I thought was just some sort of a character flaw or just not being enough of something is really just.
It is liberating. I want to go ahead and touch on that because I think a lot of people who start working with me for the first time, they're very upset by the news. And I think a lot of them initially are in denial. And, I think when I say upset by the news, this means I have to do what and I have to change what, and then I think that it's a distraction in life because, everybody else is doing this. So now I have to do something different. And I say for me, it is such.
Question. Are you talking about
changing the diet?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just changing the diet because it's not just, when I'm coaching people, it's not just oxalate. I also have to tell them about everything else they're eating, like the processed foods. And, for a lot of people, wheat is a problem. Wheat has been hybridized in this country and wheat is tearing up our GI tract. Right. And so as a result, there's wheat is in everything. So for them to have to embrace perhaps a gluten-free diet, is very, very difficult for people. And so it's liberating though, because I'll tell you what, I love bread and I love my oxalate foods. I do miss sweet potatoes. I do big time. I love the little Japanese sweet potato, but I don't eat it anymore because I don't want to feel like I'm peeing fire, but the liberating part of it that I want to say is, it's really nice to be able to say no. And when I look at food now, I don't look at it like, oh, I'm going to miss that. I look at it as you're poison. Why would I want to put you in my body? And that's where I feel like there's a mind change that can be very liberating because I don't want to feel like I'm 3 months pregnant all the time. I love having, having a flat stomach and being able to have regular bowel movements and just being able to think clearly and not have brain fog. That's the liberating part of it because I can look at the food and say, hey, that is poisonous. I don't need to eat that, as opposed to versus I think some of the people that I work with are thinking more about oh, I really miss that food. So, in your case, the diagnosis might have been liberating because you were able to put a reason behind your behavior and symptoms.
And if I can add too, there's a piece of this where, for Jeannie, there's this extra diagnosis, but almost, I'd say
connected. It's connected.
70%, maybe more of the people I work with have anxiety that seems to be related to either oxalate on its own or oxalate plus histamine. And I did too. My doctor tried to diagnose me with an anxiety disorder as well. And I remember thinking,
the doctors will love throwing drugs at women too, because
there's that as well.
Every week,
but the biggest challenge for me was that I had this sense that it was not my brain. It wasn't a personality flaw. It wasn't a way of being in the world, that my anxiety was related to a real thing that was going on in my body.
Yes.
And it took me the however long, 2 or 3 years to sort of, and I don't want to scare people. It doesn't necessarily take that long to feel better, but it was I had to be consistently different with my doctor for 2 or 3 years before he went, oh yeah, you don't have an anxiety problem. I'm like, no, I have an oxalate problem. And fortunately, I know him from before he was a doctor, so he was willing to perform the odd experiment for me. So like Jeannie, I'm a little bit, some of the detail and some of the fixation. So I'd be in there talking to him about oxalate all the time. And I got him to run a 24-hour urine a couple of times. And the first time, the amount of oxalate in my 24-hour urine was 293. And I went, do you know that I eat 60 milligrams and no more than that of oxalate a day? There's no way I should be able to throw 293 milligrams. And he said 2 things. He said, 1, the last time I ran this test, 293 wasn't in the normal range. So they've started to switch the ranges on the tests.
What is the limit? Is it 50? What is the limit?
The Mayo Clinic used to say that if you had, they don't have this on their website anymore. I can't find it. I wish I'd taken a screenshot.
Wow.
But they used to say that at more than 45 milligrams in a daily urine of oxalate, you could be diagnosed with hyperoxaluria. So how the heck can on a current test, I turn up as 293 And my doc goes, I don't see how this could be in the normal range. Like at this level, you could be throwing kidney stones. And I said, and I'm not, but I still have an oxalate issue.
I forgot to tell you, I did have kidney stones too.
Oh, well, and that's the classic one. That's where they should be paying attention.
You might have a type 1, type 2 hyperoxaluria genetics. Have you tested those yet?
For me?
For Jeannie.
Oh, for Jeannie.
I don't want to even know, because I feel like this. I feel like no matter what, I have to do the same thing. I'm taking B1, I'm taking B6.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the information gets, well, my doctors, that's the real thing, because I was there every single week for years. Because I would be like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Somebody tell me. And they would be like, you have anxiety, you need to take, take this, take that. And I haven't been back in almost 2 years, because just to have the flu feeling gone, it was a miracle. So I went a couple of weeks ago. They were like, what happened to you? They're like, you look like a totally different person.
And see, that's what it takes. It takes this longer term pattern to convince them. So now my doctor knows I don't have an anxiety disorder.
Well, did you figure out what the 290 milligrams was coming from? Was it that dumping?
Dumping. I timed that test so that I was pretty sure I was in the middle of an oxalate dump.
Yep.
So then I had him run the test for me again, another 8-9 months down the road, where I was pretty sure I was oxalate dumping again, and I was only outputting 100. And I went, yeah, that we must be getting some drop in the amount that's in my body, because I'm not outputting as much as I did.
So that's important, people listening, because if if I'm doing a test on you, and or your doctor's doing it, or whoever's working with you is doing it, and your oxalates aren't high on any of those markers, whether it's the the glyceric, glycolic, and oxalic, those three, it doesn't mean you don't have an oxalate problem, because they have to be excreted, and you may not be excreting it even with the 24-hour. You may not be excreting it. I think the only one that
because your kidneys are doing different things.
Exactly.
All the time.
Yep. And I usually tell them, I don't care what that test says. I'm going by based on your symptoms. If you have vulvodynia, you have an oxalate problem. If you have endometriosis, you have an oxalate. I don't even care what else you don't have. If you have
and
those,
for that matter, if you've got high inflammation in your body, why would you add inflammatory anything? Like,
let's wonder now,
right?
Yeah.
They say it's non-inflammatory. With people taking turmeric, spoonfuls of turmeric and making turmeric tea to cut down on inflammation, when in fact it's making them more inflamed.
They're a hamster on a wheel. They're taking one inflammatory thing.
And listen, remember in my recent post, I said that the leaky gut actually puts you in a position where you absorb oxalates more. Passive oxalate absorption increases with a leaky gut. So I'll just tell you a quick story.
What Susan Owens has talked about is that those tight junctions loosen up. And we know that those tight junctions in the gut are really important.
We can measure it with zonulin, so we know it's actually happening. And that's why I think the wheat connection is important. And for some people, it can also be dairy. I mean, it really can, because they do have molecular mimicry. So, I mean, I think it's important to understand that all of that could be predisposing you to absorbing more oxalates. And I'm thinking that might have been what happened to him. It's just, I think you don't have to have a diagnosis to have problem with oxalates.
You give autistic children a bagel, okay? And you watch them eat that gluten, and you can just watch them change from being relatively calm to doing bizarre stuff, okay? Like contemplating light switches, it's like the gluten hits them, and it just totally, the wheels come off the train.
And dairy impacts opioid receptors, and so if you've got kids,
and so does gluten, actually, that has a gluteomorphin, can actually,
and so if you've got kids eating all that kind of stuff with high oxalate in their diet and any kind of vulnerability, you really do have a perfect storm.
So Monique, am I going to live through this?
You are going to live, babe, because you're doing so well. The challenge,
sometimes I wonder, I'm like, God, if you get me through this, it's going to be a miracle. But that's why I have the passion I have, because I don't know anything. I'm just trying to share my story with other people to say, listen, if you feel this way, this is what this is. Because I'm going to start crying, because it's like, it was so much pain, and it's so much pain, and it's so unnecessary, and it's so destructive.
Yes.
And, like I said, Mandy's like, she's a genius, and, and you have all of this thing. I don't have any of that. All I have.
Yes, you do.
I know. But I have a story that covers every base. It's almost like I got hit with a train, with an oxalate train, and I'm alive. And so if I can get one person to say, oh, that's me, maybe that's what this is, then I can help somebody not have to go through this.
And that was my motivation as well. As soon as I figured out that this was the thing that, like at 48, I thought I would die before my kids grew up. And I had young kids. This was the saddest thought I'd had in my life at that point. And I had all this anxiety, like getting to the other side of that process, getting my resilience back, and then being able to say, anxiety wasn't me. I was being played by my physiology because of this thing I had in my diet. I'm not naturally an anxious person. I'm naturally kind of an upbeat, happy kind of person, I found out. I'm not naturally irritable. Like I had people who worried about me because of my temper. I'm not naturally irritable. Turns out it was this stuff that was affecting my immune system.
Here, Monique, my mom used to call me a bee all the time because she said you always in Persian, of course, in Farsi, because I always had an attitude. She's always like, what's wrong with you? You just always have an attitude. What's wrong? Why do you always, and they say it means like you just always have this look on your face like this, you know what I mean? I think it was because I was probably very uncomfortable.
The nervous system is being affected by this low grade and then higher and higher grade inflammation in the body. And as part of my nutrition course, I had this really interesting course that talked about what the interface is between the immune system and the nervous system. And I'm not a biochemist. I didn't follow deeply into that, but just what I got in that course, that as inflammation goes up, immune system's reporting to the nervous system, we've got a problem. Nervous system says, I'll do what I can. What does it do? It depresses serotonin, it depresses dopamine. If you've got any kind of thing then going on, if your brain's not neurotypical, but even if your brain's neurotypical, anxiety, lack of motivation, irritability, oppositional kinds of things, because your feel-good chemicals are all.
I don't know how I made it through college, honestly, with my condition. I actually developed an eating disorder. And now looking back, I think that was a lot to do with oxalates too, because it disrupts the signaling to the brain with appetite and satiety. I was a binge eater.
I had exactly the same problem.
You did?
And I also had this desire to kind of eat my feelings because I was trying to shut them down because I've got all this stuff going on in my brain. So,
Jeannie, what did you say? Did you have an eating disorder too, Jeannie?
Well, no, everything's a blur, actually, honestly. I just wanted to say two things to you, Monique. One was that what you shared before, it was quintessential oxalate, because on Sunday nights, after I had a whole family over for dinner and we were all eating like beet salad and all this kind of stuff, I would sit right here and I would say to my husband, I don't know what's wrong with me, but my entire body is like this. And he would say, oh, it's your anxiety, maybe it's your adrenaline. Anyway, I would say to him exactly what you said. I would say, this does not feel like it's up here. It feels like it's in here. And now, because it's like I get these windows of being free of this, just to have my entire system just relax, like it's almost like on a cellular level, my body relaxes. Yeah. I don't need anything else. You can keep the money, you can keep the food, okay? Because
keep the food.
Like slamming my fingers in the car door. Would you like a bagel? Oh no, let me just go slam my fingers in the car door instead. Okay.
I know you sound like me. I say the same thing.
No, I don't.
I don't need a bagel.
And not eat this. Because I don't like getting hit by a bus. That's why.
Jeannie, that's a lot of people don't think like that. I'm gonna be honest.
Well, so they're gonna think like that eventually, because you want to know what? Like Monique says, it's not. You don't have to be on the spectrum. It affects everybody. You can eat glass and be okay.
But you'd be surprised how many people are okay with being in pain and being sick, and their food is really important to them.
But they don't realize, they actually don't realize what it feels like to be healthy. When
that's true.
Got to the other side, I realized I had never maybe known what it felt like to have Monique, as Monique is, be available to the world, and Monique's energy level, as Monique's energy level should be, available to the world. Like in my 50s, I took up karate. How many people do you know do karate for the first time in their 50s?
Yeah.
And I just got better and better and better and better. And I would still be doing karate, except I hurt my shoulder. But I took it up in my 50s. I figured getting a green belt was a pretty good achievement.
My energy level's still not great. Okay. Some days it's okay. But I just keep saying, listen, this body is healing. My body is working hard. It's gonna come, because in the beginning, like I said, I had a big chunk of time where I felt like I was 20. And now as I'm going along, it's like I have windows of that, but like my anxiety, I mean, not my anxiety, my energy, and also like I get migraines a lot and all of that. So I have to like address some of these histamine things too. But I did what you said, Mandy. I started to take the DAO enzyme, and Monique had told me too, yeah, it sounds like histamines. So I'm taking that. I don't really want to take antihistamine every day, because so I want to just, and in my mind, I say to myself, listen, histamines, mast cells, oxalate is the demon that causes all this stuff to get crazy.
Yeah.
I say to myself, you know what, Jean? You got to just ride this train, because when the oxalate resolves itself, a lot of this stuff is going to sort itself out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we have so much more resilience than we realize if we've been sick for most of our lives. So some of us may feel like, we can't get there from here, so to speak. But I've had people that I've worked with who have been in their 50s and 60s, and they get better. And
it's definitely possible.
It's just so wonderful to see how much resilience there really is in the human body once you start to get this stuff out of the way.
Amen. Well, listen, ladies, I gotta run. But this is really fun, and we should do this again for sure. Definitely. Yes. And that documentary. Love that idea.
Yeah, I think it's the time. It's the right time. Maybe we can do that.
Thank you, Monique, for everything, for helping me. I appreciate it so much. You're an angel.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I just wish that we could have, I wish that we could have given you like the silver bullet thing, but I think you're coming along, and
going through it is a good thing, because you can't relate to anybody if you haven't been through stuff. Mandy couldn't help every patient that has IC if she hadn't actually experienced it.
And I was one of them. I had really bad.
IC. Oh, I feel really bad. When you have IC and you're in glass, you're right there with that person.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and see, that does make a difference, having skin in the game, and I absolutely have skin in the game in all kinds of areas, unfortunately.
All right, well, ladies, I gotta hop, but it's been fun, and we will be in touch on Instagram.
Sounds good.
All right, take care. Bye. Love you, ladies.
Bye.
Well, that's all I have for you today. I truly hope you enjoyed this interview. If you have any questions related to oxalates, oxalate diet, or the oxalate trio, be sure to drop a message in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any upcoming interviews. You can find the links below for the Instagram profiles for Low Ox Grandma, Low Ox Coach, and Dr. Mandy DCN. If you want to book a one-to-one call with me, simply click on the link below. Also below is our link for our root cause investigation. We'll see you at the next interview. Bye-bye.